Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining our webinar today with Christine F. Anderson. Christine is the author of the book Forever Different, a memoir of one woman's journey living with bipolar disorder. She also manages her own publishing company called CFA Publishing. Today, she will be talking about the way bipolar disorder is depicted in movies, TV, and other media, and how the media can sometimes romanticize bipolar and other mental illnesses. She will discuss examples and share what she thinks can be improved and how you can help. We are very pleased to welcome Christine.
Thank you. Thank you for having me here today. I guess the first thing I should say is a little bit about my history. I was diagnosed bipolar 1 in 1987. Long before they called it bipolar disorder, it was manic depressive illness. And I have been in and out of treatment for over 28 years. I have been stable and compliant with my medication and compliant with my treatment in terms of seeing a therapist and a psychiatrist since 2008. And that led me to be able to open up my own company, work for myself, and live what I call fairly, and I have quotes in my hands, I'm making little quote signs, normal life. So I wouldn't say that I'm an expert in any sense of the word, but I've definitely been living with the disease long enough to know some of the pitfalls and some of the symptoms and some of the warning signs. And so I hope that what I talk about today with regards to how the media romanticizes mental illness, and in particular bipolar disorder, strikes a chord with you and just leads you to think what it is that's being portrayed in the media. So romanticization of mental illness is everywhere thanks to social media. Sometimes it feels like romanticization of mental illness, and in particular bipolar disorder, is everywhere these days, and this feeds the mental health stigma. There's some trendy posts on how people deal with mental illness and how they actually are. It's pretty like being somewhere in social media sphere, and one of those that bothers me the most, I guess, is being strong for too long. I see that quite a lot. I see that overused. And what is too long? Is a year too long? Is 5 years too long? Is 28 years too long? I mean, when you're talking about your mental health, there's no time that's too long. You have to continue to fight every day. So, quite simply, romanticizing mental illness is the creation of some fanciful or glamorous portrayal of mental illness. The media has been cited as being particularly awful in creating the distorted image of mental health. That sometimes is how appealing to people and makes people with mental health disorders, commonly bipolar disorder, because of the apparent trendiness of it. They make it seem like, wow, this must be cool to have. And websites like Tumblr in particular, mental illness has seemingly become more of an aesthetic than anything else. You know, it's true, many people are just trying to find an outlet to get out how they feel inside. For them, that could be taking quotations that mean something and putting them up and using memes and different quotes from different inspirational sayings and, you know, putting them on a black and white photo or a color drawing and showing the chaos in their minds and what they're feeling at that moment. And in my opinion, that's the strongest use of social media, being able to get your feelings out there and let other people know, well, this is what's on my mind, and this is how I feel right now at this second. And it might be different 5 minutes from now. You could see all the different memes that I'm talking about in the last slide. Different ones, people cry not because they're weak, it's because they've been strong for too long. That's the one that kind of sits in my craw, and I don't know why. It's not so offensive. It's just that, like I said, what time limit is there on too long? We have to get it in our minds that this is something that we live with every day for the rest of our lives. And we have to never give up. And as I said at the beginning, the one post that I have seen that I'm not fond of that goes on about depression not being a sign of weakness, and this part I agree with 100%, but a sign of being too strong for too long, presenting depression in this overly generalized way is, to be blunt, wrong and completely ignores the way depression actually works and ignores the brain chemistries and function with our brains to cause depression. So depression is not a sign of weakness. It's not a sign that you've been strong too long. It's a chemical imbalance that triggers that part of your brain to say, this is it. I've hit my wall. I'm coming down off the high, and now it's going to take effort to get out of bed in the morning. It's going to take effort to take a shower. It's going to take effort to do the little things that I take for granted every day, maybe when I'm normal or when I'm manic, things that would be a given on any other given day for anybody else to do with ease. Some of the films that address depression have been Waking Madison, Phoebe in Wonderland, Ghost World. Those are some of the better ones. Then there's also, Hollywood's role. Hollywood has done the mental health community a huge disservice by condoning roles in movies and television series that are extreme. We are either showing people, extremely manic and tragic, or extremely depressed and suicidal. We are witnessing a person with severe mania, suicidal, dark depression, psychosis, schizophrenic episodes. Rare is that we find a role with a person with a mental illness that's medication compliant, therapy compliant, and functioning individual that may have a career or a 9-to-5 job. Empire on Fox has done the best job thus far portraying an individual with bipolar disorder. They have exposed the character from every angle possible, and Trade Byer's character has dignity which so many others lack. They go for episodes without discussing his bipolar disorder and just showing him in a normal state. Then they'll have an episode where he has held a gun to his head. Then they'll have an episode where he can't take a shower and his wife has to help him into it. They have showed every angle of the disease, and in my opinion, has done the best job of really presenting the whole facet of the illness. A couple of films that focused on the mania, but also touched upon depression, was Touched with Fire, Infinitely Polar Bear, and one that I don't have up here, which I just saw, which was No Letting Go, which was about an adolescent diagnosed with bipolar disorder, which showed both sides of it. I mean, he couldn't get up, he couldn't go to school, he couldn't focus, he couldn't study, and then he would have these flights of ideas where he'd sit in front of the computer for hours and plan music and write music. Of course, nothing great. It was all pretty awful, but in his mind, it was the best masterpiece that he ever written. Again, Trey Byers on Empire, example of a balanced character. The news media. If ever there were a primary cause for stigma problem, it would be the news media. The only time we hear about mental health is when there's a mass shooting or a homicide. And then the next word we hear are they were bipolar, they were depressed, they were schizophrenic. Where are the positive stories, the stories of hope, the stories of survival, the stories of success and perseverance? Why don't they do some specials on people living with bipolar disorder or living with a mental illness who, somewhat like me, running a business, successful business, employees, holding it together, going to therapy, doing their medication, living their lives as normally as possible. That's what we need them to do. That's what we need Congress to focus on. That's what we need the media to focus on. What posts like the strong for too long one do is create the fallen image, the fallen hero image. It creates a story of someone who has continuously fought and in a way lost because the depression won in this scenario. Other mental illness romanticizing creates sorts of images and stories and even ideals that are unrealistic. Ultimately, it is not how mental health works, which adds to more confusion and misconstrued ideas that lead to mental illness stigma. When we latch onto these images and these stories, we deny ourselves and others the opportunity to see the disorder and, more importantly, the person who is struggling with it for what and who they really are. When we create stories, we kind of detach ourselves from the reality, which I should suggest puts us in the line to ignore the actual issues that we face. And this is a huge disservice to the people who are mentally ill. What we should do is look at mental illness for what they are. We should look at the people who have them for who they are. For those of us trying to express our mental health struggles, we should also try to recognize our disorders and our symptoms for what they actually are. In doing so, we can come to better understand our disorders, which could lead to proper treatment instead of being lost in a sea of stories and fancy. We can get the actual help that we need.
Thank you, Christine. So now we'll take a few questions. So first of all, you talk a lot about the strong for too long meme and how that can be harmful. Do you think there's any memes on Tumblr or other social media right now that are helpful or might show mental illness more accurately?
I do. I feel there's tons of memes that describe what certain episodes are like, what it feels like to be manic, what it feels like to be depressed. There's other memes that are never give up, don't quit. I am not defined by my disorder. There's so many positive, inspirational, uplifting memes and quotes on Facebook, on Tumblr, on Twitter. You know, it's just digging past what's being used most commonly to see what else is out there.
Great, thank you. So you mentioned Empire shows the main character with bipolar disorder does a good job of showing multiple sides of the illness. Are there any other movies or shows or characters that you think do a good job like this?
There was a show that got canceled that was called Black Box. Um, that was a good show that showed both sides of the illness. That I think it was on ABC a couple seasons ago. Another one would be Touched by Fire. Was, even though they did emphasize the mania because they had to get the point across of why they were being hospitalized, it did show them trying to live normal lives. And then No Letting Go was about, again, an adolescent being, or a child that actually started when he was about 8 years old, being diagnosed with bipolar disorder when he was an adolescent. But it showed the ups and downs, and it showed how it can manifest into and look like it could be other things other than what it really is. So that was interesting to me.
Thank you. One more question. What can people do when we see inaccurate representations in the media? What can we do about it?
I think the most important thing that you can do about, especially with social media, is comment. Leave a comment about what you feel could have been done better to explain the situation or to explain the disorder. Social media is our strongest marketing tool. It's the way we reach the world. It's the way of the world today. So if everybody can do their part on social media and put out the vibe of positivity and being able to work through the symptoms of their disease and show that and exaggerate that and not so much the negative, I think it would be better served for the media to start pulling off of some of that vibe than the negative that we hear all the time.
Great. Thank you very much, Christine. We're glad that you could share your insight with us today. I'd like to thank our audience as well and want to remind everyone that all of our webinars are recorded and posted on our website at ibpf.org. If you have any more questions for Christine, you can email them to me, Heather, at hzupin@ibpf.org, and I will pass them along to her and post the answers on our website. So thanks, everyone. We hope to see you at the next webinar.